I don't know, it's like a little trick to try and make us forget about it, that
Yeah.
we're being watched.
Yeah. As soon as you say it, there was something in me that noticed. I noticed something in me
Yep.
that it's
Yeah, me too.
probably what is it? A little bit of fear. Yeah, that's really all it is. Just a little bit of fear.
Yeah. Maybe they say love is the opposite of fear, so maybe we just have to like send our love to the audience. Thanks for watching, y'all. Now we're good. No more fear.
I
Um,
think I think we can have this is actually a topic I talked to Kim about and I deleted the recording, so
yeah.
I saw some praise about hatred and division, but the I think you can have it about anything so long as you are trying to love God and love people while you have it. So have it, and then maybe even if you actually are careful, like you're full of care, um, there's you would have some kinds of fear, anger, hate, division, like everything. You might have a little bit of all those things
Mhm.
if you're really being careful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, like the whole idea of like a saint being like an emotionless person is very off-putting to me. Like, like you have Christ before the crucifixion, like sweating blood profusely or whatever. I don't remember the
yeah,
exact details, but and like and we've talked about like people might say like that there's no anger in Christ when he goes to flip the money tables, but nonetheless there's definitely like regardless there's definitely some sort of passion, and it's like um yeah, the idea that like fear that we're trying to get rid of all these uncomfortable emotions, I think is incorrect.
I sympathize with what you said. I think there is a place for fear. There is a reason we've evolved to feel fearful in certain circumstances. It is healthy. It helps preserve your own safety. I think what may be is trying to be expressed in those conferences is that you shouldn't be in the grip of fear. Fear shouldn't control your life. And unfortunately, that's what happens a lot in our civilization. That fear, instead of being just one more ingredient in this great melting pot of emotions that we carry along through life, that fear becomes the dominating force. And I have experience with that. I have suffered from anxiety. And
It's just a matter of like how we navigate them and stuff and not being possessed by them.
well, that's a key there. You don't
Yep.
just want to be gripped by them such that it fills you up and it pushes out, you know,
Yeah.
what's good, or the number one commandment to love God and love people, right? So they're dangerous, but it, you know, I don't know. It gets pretty simple um, if you treat Jesus as the great teacher, um, your king, and
Mhm.
he says love God and love people. Well, that means like all these other sentences or ideas like anger is bad or hatred is bad or division is bad or fear is bad, like any of them,
Mhm.
you compare it to what Jesus taught. Jesus taught love God and love people. So then if that's good, then the bad would be when you're not loving God and not loving people.
Mhm.
So yeah, if the fear grips you to the point where you're not loving God and loving people, okay. According
Yeah.
to Jesus, that would be bad if we're using that as our measurement. But if you
Yeah.
can somehow keep them
Yeah.
both,
That definitely
keep them
happens
in
to
the right
me
order.
occasionally on these recordings, that the fear takes over. But
Just a little bit.
a little bit.
Yeah,
A
I
little
mean,
bit.
how to what degree it takes over.
Yeah. I think a part of it also is that I'm just never a fan of like I feel like I don't know if I actually want to talk about this. I was just like
Um,
I just don't like the like I feel like anytime that we interact through the internet.
you and I, or people
No,
in
no,
general.
anyone like
Okay.
that who knows who could be watching, and like
I just had a sweat bead roll down my arm.
I mean like even in private so-called private chats, like even when I'm messaging friends, it's subtly in my mind, that maybe there's powers attending to what's going on, but I don't know, in general.
Well, the
Yeah.
powers, I think, I mean, you could just say it's like a are the humans, right? And then if they are humans, like we need to love them too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I reminded the anadromist Burn Power was talking with Paul about how like the people in who used to be in Soviet Russia and stuff like that, like they see us like, you know, having these long conversations through text and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we would never do that, you know, like we just use it to say, hey, I'm coming into town or something like that because they feel like, you know, it's all the man is watching, you know. But just you know, I'm not I'm not particularly frightful on this nice morning. It's wonderful to be talking to you. You know, hopefully, hopefully the audience does not prevent our conversation from being generative.
Well, if you could talk to the people that you're scared of, right? And you could try to see the good uh, that they are doing, um, without just focusing on the things that you want to say they could be doing better. You could start with just say, well, what are they doing that is good, right? Well, and that can be hard too. You know, that's a hard exercise to look at as someone who has a conflict of interest with you and say, well, this is what they're doing good. But it's a
Mhm.
good practice. So we don't have to try to do that now, but it's something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nobody in the audience particularly is frightful to me, you know, because I choose what I post, you know, and if I don't want something up, then I won't post
Yeah.
it, you know, but like in in it's also just like a secrecy thing.
Privacy, that's the second, privacy. Think about the consequence of that statement. I have no privacy. Every important, intimate relationship that we have with God and with people is absolutely conditioned on privacy.
You know, it's not necessarily that I'm afraid that somebody will see my messages to my friend, but more so that like I would rather they don't, you know, and like I would rather keep a little bit of a
Privacy is not a big deal. You can abandon private property, you can give up your privacy, and we're not to think that that is going to have a serious impact on the ability to develop intimate, loving, deep personal friendships. And then they end up the statement, of course, by saying, I've never been happier. You can't define happy without theology and philosophy. Both are subjects that are disdained by the Davos elites. The abolition of private property with the abolition of any sacred relationships by the abolition of privacy.
I would rather keep a little bit of mystery to me, you know, or something, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
But
I mean,
regardless,
it could be a stage of life too, though,
could be.
right? It's kind of like, it's nice to have room to, to play, maybe make mistakes, you know, and then there's some places where you feel like it's harder to play because, you know, maybe making a mistake would have uh, like more impact, right?
Mhm.
And so like part of being a human is we're born ignorant. We have to go through this process of learning, and we learn often by our own mistakes. So it's nice to be given that opportunity to be able to make the mistakes, right?
Yeah,
So I
it's
mean,
true.
our country does pretty good on that, I think, compared to other countries.
Mhm.
And I'm not even a patriot or a nationalist. I'm just trying to look at it objectively.
Mhm. I feel like you're a true patriot, which is like you love America, but you don't like where it's at, or something.
I love people. Like America's not people. America's
Mm.
like that's something else.
Mhm.
There's people who live within
Mhm.
borders
Yeah.
called
Yeah,
America.
maybe I should take that back, you know. Yeah, maybe I'm projecting because for me, you know, that was one of my some of my first religious mystical experiences were like listening to, you know, the national anthem at like a baseball game or something. You know, like that's a
Mhm.
powerful that can be a very powerful thing. And yeah, I think that kind of like whet my appetite for those sorts of transcendent sorts of feelings and stuff. Um,
It's interesting, the different responses you can have. There's always been something in me that uh, you know the feeling of butterflies before a race,
Hmm.
or maybe even the feeling that something bad's about to happen,
Hmm.
or and it's deep in your stomach, and you maybe
Yeah.
feel a little squeezy, maybe a little sick to
Oh
your
yeah.
stomach.
Yeah.
That's what I feel during saying the Pledge of Allegiance for a national anthem,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it's
Yeah. I've been
yeah.
there too, particularly with the national anthem. I mean, particularly with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was like, this feels a little weird.
But
Like,
you also were just talking about another experience people can have where it's like being a part of something important, something bigger than yourself. So, like you're pointing at another kind of experience people can have as well.
hmm.
Same thing, same screen,
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
two totally totally different experiences.
Yeah. It reminds me of pretty much every year I cry at the St. Patrick's Day parade, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just because I'm there. Everyone's happy. People are going by. They're all waving. We're like, I'm like, this is unity and multiplicity. It's like we are coming together. We're celebrating. It's, I don't know. It's just, I don't go to church very often, but
Hmm.
when I do, I usually cry there as well. But, it's like everywhere can be like church where it's like we see heaven and earth. There's certain times where people do things in the right way where it's almost like they're acting out, you know, um, like they're just acting out the pattern of reality, at various levels. And yeah, that can be moving. I don't know.
I mean, I get tears. That's
The gift of tears. Have you heard
yeah,
about that?
heard about it. I don't know about it then.
Yeah. I think it comes out of the Jewish tradition, I think. How gift tears are a gift from God. They also Tomberg also talks about it in the temperance chapter.
I've been connecting these tears to joy.
which lasts longer than happiness and is more dependable than pleasure. Um,
Like I've always kind of wondered what joy is. It's a bit
Mhm.
mysterious. And so whenever it's weird, I'll have the tears and then it's I'm wondering, it's like, is that joy with these tears where it's like I feel like I'm somehow I'm receiving some penetrating experience about is deeply connected uh, to reality, to the now, in which somehow maybe even breaks through my entire worldview. So then my worldview just maybe gets shattered, and then there's an experience, like maybe even an unfiltered experience of just life
Yeah.
and truth, and I don't know, maybe God or something like that.
Yeah. This is kind of a weird angle, and I don't know if it fits perfectly, but the word like repentance is coming to mind. Obviously, it's not how we usually think about it, but it's almost like in even those moments of joy, it's like we're turning back towards God, like we're turning our face to look at the real. And like it's almost like repentance in a way, but it's not, it's like
It seems connected, like a
yeah,
necessary ingredient or something.
yeah, like joy. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I think
there's
that seems,
something like, am I seeking? Yeah, what am I seeking? And maybe I should be seeking something different. Like that's
Mhm.
if you're repenting, you're doing something like that, even more fundamentally.
Yeah.
So
I think joy is a good word. Like the thing that really was sticking is like it's something about the fact that it's like you kind of like submit to it. Like you were saying, like it comes from outside and it's like, whoa. I guess that's kind of the case with all emotions to some extent, but um I don't know. I feel like I had something else, but I kind of lost it there.
mhm.
A brief interruption.
This is not a book about sadness, at least not in the modern sense of the word. The word sadness originally meant fullness, from the same Latin root, sadis or sadis, that also gave us sated and satisfaction. Not so long ago, to be sad meant you were filled to the brim with some intensity of experience. It wasn't just a malfunction in the joy machine. It was a state of awareness, setting the focus to infinity and taking it all in, joy and grief all at once. When we speak of sadness these days, most of the time what we really mean is despair, which is literally defined as the absence of hope. But true sadness is actually the opposite, an exuberant upwelling that reminds you how fleeting and mysterious and open-ended life can be. That's why you'll find traces of the blues all over this book. But you might find yourself feeling strangely joyful at the end of it. And if you are lucky enough to feel sad, well, savor it while it lasts, if only because it means that you care about something in this world enough to let it under your skin.
Well, I most recently felt it. Another word is gratitude. It's like we just name these things. You know, I don't know if that's the right name.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was just thinking about, you know, I'm technical. I like to write software, and I'm interested in New Jerusalem, and so then I'm interested in software that might help in New Jerusalem, and then I'm interested in, for example, important things, maybe like economic things, and software for that. And so then I'm trying to, like, I'm thinking about an app where I can, when I receive a good meal, I've had so many bad meals that I want to like somehow just find out where the people are who care, who are careful with preparing the meal. And I want to know where they're at, and I want to be able to even tip them well. You know, I want to go get what they have and tip them well. And I want an app to do it. And then, but then I started thinking, it's like, well, it's not just the chef, it's also the dishwasher. And if you were actually going into a restaurant, it'd be people who make tools, and there's people who are transporting things. And then there's even the idea of the thing that you're going to eat across time and space, and the spirit of the person there that across time and space, all these interactions across time and space of people, to the point where it's no longer just being grateful to this person, which is where I started. It's now all of a sudden I'm grateful to God. Like, what do you call that? All of that went into the meal at the table, you know.
Yeah.
That, yeah, it brings tears. Like, it's a gratitude that it's amazing.
For sure. It's
And
really
you can tap into. It's available. Like,
yeah.
it's always available.
Even the simplest things in life, you know, if you take a pause, you know, one cannot. I mean, yeah, the sense of gratitude arises, at least for me, you know. Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And have you ever heard of this phrase, the cosmic giggle?
I think I maybe heard McKenna say it.
Yeah, he said, yeah. And a lot of times it's kind of the context of like the weirdness that can't be explained, like the part that always exceeds our understanding, where it's like, haha, you think you can pin me down, not gonna happen. But in my mind, like, I kind of, another way that I think about it is kind of it's just when you're going about your life and then something you notice, just the absurd like beauty of, or just like the mystery all around you. Like I remember one time just like tying your shoe or something, and then you just say, wow, I'm a human being, I'm tying my shoe, I'm on Earth, like, look at this, like these little strings, and it's just like the world is crazy.
So many people have, for example, Kathleen Raine, the poet, talks about an experience of just sitting, writing at the dining table and looking up at a small bouquet of flowers and suddenly becoming aware that the entire cosmos was alive, that it wasn't simply an artifact of the divine will, but it was rather an emanation of the divine being, and that the whole world around her was theophanic, and this being a kind of a chapter-turning moment in her life, but it unfolded out of something as quotidian as looking up at a vase full of flowers.
And I think people actually have those experiences all the time.
Yes,
the trouble is
so.
we haven't got or we've lost, or we've even willfully forgotten the conceptual framework to make sense of them.
Yes.
But I think any experience of beauty, of the gratuity of beauty, of being faced with something that exceeds me, yet doesn't threaten to devour me, fills us with that sort of reverence, which is intrinsic to humanity, I think. And I think one of the great sort of faith tasks of today, and one of the great spiritual tasks, is to re-equip people to make sense of that sort of experience.
Yes.
Like, it's all a miracle.
Next thing you know, you're like in the mirror, like, oh my God.
Like human beings, great.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah.
You can become so overwhelmed that you just like maybe even fall down and start seizuring and leaking everywhere all at the same time.
Yeah.
If you really were to experience it all, your whole system would just become overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I really feel like that's like a it's like a dial or like a valve or something, and like we can, and like my mind goes to psychedelics as well as kind of turning off or opening the valve or something, and like because that's how I always experience it, is that it's kind of this depth that can open and just keep going and going, but it's too much, like you were saying, like you can't stay in that state, so it's like there's been times where I feel like piercing through the veil, or however you want to say it, and like everything is just radiating with intense, like seeming phenomenologically in a completely different place almost, where it's like this blooming, like it's very hard to describe. It's been a while since I've had kind of a really, I don't know, but even recently, like just the feeling that everything is kind of alive and stuff, but it's hard to stay in that state, and it's kind of like, how do we acclimate ourselves to remember God, I suppose, and like I think virtue, it's important to have virtue as well in order to kind of acclimate oneself to those spaces. Like I feel like you can't remain in those places if you have like if you're carrying too much stuff, like baggage or whatever.
I know we're creatures of habit, and our environment is important. So, we can start tweaking our little habits and tweaking, modifying our environment and kind of experimenting and playing while paying attention to the results of the experiment. And then there's people who've been doing that throughout history who might report on what worked for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Those experiences, what I think happens, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, is then they turn to philosophy or theology from there, trying to explain what that experience they had. Which can be good, but can also not be good, because there's something that happens that people tend to ruin things, right? And you get them into groups or faculties or seminaries. You know what I mean? They just kind of suck all the fun out of it. And they don't want anybody stepping out of line, acting different than the rest of the guys, right? And that's why people thought Blake was insane. He was actually probably the most sane man in England at the time. But, you come back from the mountainside, like with Moses, right? He has to veil his face after he goes to the mountain, then he has to speak through Aaron, because you're not the same guy. Been transformed, right? This is the one's experience, but then what happens when you try to bring it down from the mountain and share it with people? Well, what happened with Moses? They screwed it up. Right? No, you idiots, it's not what you were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's crazy though, like the phenomenology of it, like
something breaks through.
It's very hard to describe, but that's always my sense, is that there's kind of like a radiating fullness to everything, but I really struggle to put it into words. Like I remember one time, like looking up at the sky. I'm reminded of the experience that you had mentioned to me, but um, I remember like it's so hard to describe those types of things. It's like what is phenomenologically different, when we're living in the kingdom, like when we're communing with God, like when we're walking with God, like how do you, it's hard to describe those phenomenological experiences.
That's where Chad talks about the tasting of the banana,
Mhm.
right? So if you've never had a banana, it would be impossible for me to somehow use words to allow you to know the experience of the taste of a banana.
Mhm. Yeah.
All I could do
So
is maybe I could probably use words to get you to start changing your habits and routines and the environment such that next thing you know, there's a banana that and next thing you know, you're putting it in your mouth,
mhm.
So,
It points
but
towards the banana.
right, the words can point you toward not just yeah, I mean, but it could point you to a story that you can become a part of such that you end up tasting a banana.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the words just can't do it. The words can do things, like create a map and a lot of other things, but it can't give you the taste of a banana directly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, once you've had the taste of banana, maybe there's some words that might then cause you, like
Mhm.
Pavlov's dog, to start salivating and remembering the experience.
Mhm.
And then dreaming about the taste of eating bananas. From then on, you might be able to have that dream. But
Yeah.
I don't know. The
Yeah. I
dreams are
mean,
pretty weird. Sometimes you might experience some things in dreams that seem out of nowhere. But
yeah, that's true. Um, yeah,
that's how
it's
that's
remind.
how I experienced unconditional love the first time. That's the reason I mentioned it. I experienced it in a dream, and
Mm,
yeah. So
wow. I think you told me that story.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
But that's what being in the kingdom is like. It's like the experience of having unconditional love flow through you.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, I'm with that. Like it's hard to, it's not, yeah.
It's a wild. That's what the banana tastes like, in my words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with speaking of banana and stuff, it's reminding me of Sherry and also other people talking about sub creation and the place of no images and also um
What'd you
creation.
say? The place with no images. What'd you say before that?
um what did I say before that?
Something about creation,
Yeah, it's sub creation. Yes, and
sub creation.
that's
Okay,
a C.S. Lewis word. I don't know if
that's
you
a
got
strange. That's a strange word. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar word.
gotcha. Yeah, I don't know if he got it from someone else, but C.S. Lewis talking about it when he's talking about like building a legendarium. Like let's say I
Another strange word.
yeah, I imagine like let's say I imagine like a mystical, like um the Lord of the Rings, like the realm, like J.R.R. Tolkien thinks up um Middle Earth, right? And like
Mhm.
this is a sub creation according to C.S. Lewis, such that like it's just like God, he's creating, and um but he's also creating under God, such that everything he creates has its basis in God's creation. It's like when he thinks up um, the orc is like something that he didn't come up with, right? Other people have talked about it and it has its basis in like human experiences, right? Or like when he talks about, you know, um the the lake the lake in the Shire, he's basing it off of lakes in God's creation, right? So it's like every creative act is based on, makes use of these uh, representations which are given to us by God. They're part of reality, and we kind of recombine them. And it connects insofar as Sherry was talking about how that's what we do to give thanks to God. We can't, um, we take the representations and we put them together in a way that will hopefully point or like you know, I guess point to our gratitude, or something like that. It's like you were saying the words, like we can never say, like, I think that there is saying thank you, God, I'm grateful to God. Um, thank you, give us this daily bread, like thank you for sustaining me day by day. Or, I can, I can like orate a beautiful poem, or I can write a song, or I can make my whole life, a prayer, a prayerful saying thanks. If everything I do is to give thanks, and it's like and all that is kind of this sub-creative act in a way. I
So
don't know. Yeah.
the there's a spirit inside a person that creates, right, and does this thing that where there emerges a sub-creation, and then there's an aim within the person that creates and
Mhm.
doing the sub-creation thing. And so my point is, um, you know, that's important, right? So the act of creation and sub-creation itself, that creating tools, you know, well, being able to wield a tool, like all of that, it's important, it's powerful, but is it good, right? And that's where I don't know that that's where I think I want to share the good news. Like there's a difference between there's what is good and evil, and it's like there's Jesus kind of provides an answer to it.
Mhm.
Uh, and so we can do our sub creation in ways which you know are on mission according to the commission, or we could do other things. So
Can you say that last part again? I got distracted by the light on my
we
face. I want to go I'm gonna shut the
go
light real
ahead,
quick.
go ahead. Blinded by the light.
That sunlight on my face. Yeah.
The so we can that sub creation topic. It's like we can do that um, by being filled with different kinds of spirit, different spirit. When Jesus is your teacher, is your king, you can go on mission to share the good news that the kingdom is at hand, and for everyone and anyone, it's available and accessible. And so then that was his co-mission. We cooperate in the mission, and he teaches, yeah, and he teaches us what's good and what's not good. So doing we do things, we can create, but you know, there's are we doing those things in service to, who are we doing those in service to, and what's the mission that we're on as we do them? Like, so yeah, I'm just trying to remind uh, that the actions we do, while powerful, uh, they're not. They can be better. To the extent that because I'm practicing making Jesus my king and my teacher, is to the extent that we are um, on mission, uh, to the commission, to go out and spread the good news of the kingdom, that it's available to all. So that's what I toss in, beyond just the points on subcreation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with what you said.
Because it's like if you all of a sudden your mind gets opened up to with some mind altering experience, and you all of a sudden you're on the ground seizuring and wetting yourself, and then maybe that door never closes, and you're doing that for weeks and months and years. It's like, does that help you on the mission? So it's like super powerful experience, maybe even as beautiful, maybe even as ecstatic. It's and all these things, but you know, towards what end, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the experiences available to humans are
It's
diverse.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surely.
So like and then another thing, then the co-creations. So like this convective heat engine is Karen Wong introduced me to a guy named Jason Delport, and Jason Delport had been given these the idea of this giant structure in a desert that can extract moisture out of the air and essentially create rivers, and it could provide clean water for like 80,000 people or something. It's this huge thing, and I've worked with him like almost every Friday for 2 years. He lives in Tasmania, and he at one point in our talks he had mentioned Paul Kingsnorth, and he thought Paul Kingsnorth was interesting because he was an environmentalist who converted into a Christian, and so we were interested in trying to connect with Paul because we wanted to show him this tech that could be used to help with climate change, that could be put in a desert, that can terraform deserts and be the foundation for cities, and then Jason even wonders if this isn't like part of Revelation, part of.
But see, this is an anti-machine idea, and here's why. And because
people think this,
I'm telling you right now, like this, and I said this to Paul, and Paul wasn't really going there with me, but I think this is right. I think the very idea of scarcity feeds the machine, because scarcity feeds the idea that we need to be at war against each other and against nature. Like, scarcity drives that mentality. But you're talking about a technology that says that is like, let's assume that scarcity is not a thing, and I just have to use my imagination to imagine how to bring the plenitude that God has provided so that we can access that plenitude.
And it's not even my imagination. It's the
right, exactly.
An angel inseminated an idea into a brain at a certain time within the story,
Right. That's why because the thing that we call our imagination, when it is properly oriented toward the vertical, can receive things from above.
Right.
And I think this is the solution. It's like it's a matter of redirecting the gaze, right? Redirecting the gaze from the horizontal toward the vertical, but that doesn't mean that we stop doing human things, like creating tools.
Yeah, and I think Jason would even say that, like, it wasn't even that he redirected his gaze, but it's almost like he was just pulled toward it. Like, so there's there's the thing about Pharaoh's heart was hardened. It's like how much of it is us choosing to redirect our gaze, and how much of it is the story pulling people toward the proper way to gaze,
Right. But there still has to be we're
encouraging people to
he had
gaze
to
properly.
Participate. He still had to participate. He still had to be an active participant, though, because it's like when he could have felt that pulling and just been like.
But you have things that I don't know. I've been pulled, and there's some things where it's like right now I can't just say, oh, I'm going to ignore Jason Delport, because my whole life I've been thinking, okay, peace on earth requires clean water, and I was interested in these machines with water. I've had dreams about them, and now I get connected with someone. I build them a website. We have a website, and it's like I can't just ignore, all of a sudden say, Jason, I'm done with you, right? The only way I can say, Jason, I'm done with you, is if all of a sudden we come in and learn, oh, the physics doesn't work, right? We haven't figured that out. We've had many smart people be unable to prove that the physics can't work. So for me, God created me in such a way that I'm not going to be able to.
No, what I was suggesting though is that Jason could have just rejected the idea out at the outset, right? So I understand this.
He would say the same thing that I'm saying, is he was just. It's almost like we have no free will in some situations,
right?
That's
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
He wouldn't say it's his idea. Yeah, it's going to be a topic that it's not like the good news. Like the topic of the good news, I feel like is a topic that's available to everyone, but the topic of the convective heat engine, I think, as soon as you start talking about that, there's there's going to be people who are blind to it and maybe always blind to it. But so, if you for example, you use some unfamiliar words from C.S. Lewis, some of that I'll be blind to it, right? There would need to be all these necessary steps for me to just catch up with that, with whatever those words are pointing at. So that's something to keep in mind, as well as like how good is the news, or how good is that creation? Maybe it can be a piece of something that's part of an orchestra, So it's still good, but maybe it's not for everyone. And that's good too, that it's not for everyone.
Yeah. Good points from Gavin.
I've already got warmed up with Jason this morning, so
Yeah.
it's not like I just woke up.
Yeah, I rolled out of bed not too long ago.
Yeah. I've been going for 3.5 hours or so now.
Yeah.
I do notice, like, though, that you and I right now, I feel like I entered the kingdom with you, right? I've noticed when it happens, like it's not something that's just I'm always in the kingdom or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something about the two or more gathered in my name. I felt it a little bit here and there this morning with Jason. But yeah, I feel it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that, it's like it's the remembering, It's like as we, when we turn our attention back to what is most important, like that's what kind of shapes the world we live in. And it's like the kingdom is here, but we won't see it until we attend to it, And it's like so when we come together and also, there's the kind of communal aspect, of course, but like it's just, yeah, I've talked with a bunch of people, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I more so just think it's an important point, which is that I've talked with a bunch of people, like I've made a couple of friends over the past few years who are not like inclined towards spiritual ideas, let's say, and like, but nonetheless, as a human, they inevitably find them interesting to a certain degree. So, I'll have conversations with them, and these people who are, go about their
Muggle
lives and stuff, never really attending to God.
There's no such thing as muggles. Everybody has the wizard inside.
When one of the things that they've said to me is that, it's just
You're not a muggle because words are magic.
The sitting and talking with somebody.
You're being put under a spell.
For like 2 hours.
Which makes you think you're a muggle.
The sitting and talking with somebody for like 2 hours. Like people don't do that anymore. Like even at lunch and stuff, people will go to lunch and they'll be eating most of the time, but they'll be talking, and it's probably like an hour, and then they're out of there. And I don't mean to make out
the big muggle lie.
I don't mean to be too generalizing here. Like you still see couples like sitting in benches and stuff, but generally, I feel like there's a lot of people who don't just kind of abide, and like be with reality, be with other people. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes people want to go spread the good news, and they think that means taking a Bible and translating it and sharing it with all the nations. And it's like, I think Jesus taught something about love each other, and that's how they'll know that you are my followers.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like this love, this doing the love thing, is the way to spread the good news, to invite people into the kingdom.
I'm totally with that. I'm totally with that. I was just about to say.
It's like, and it's beyond language. Like you can do it even with people who don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
So the five holy wounds are the 5 piercings of Christ. Of course, he suffered more wounding than that, but in the resurrection, those are the wounds that remain. Not all the wounds that he suffered remain, but these remain. But it's the wounding gaze. So we have this image of Peter denying Christ and then seeing him and seeing that he's seen by him. So there's a moment after the denials where Peter sees that Christ is gazing upon him, and he is pierced. So there's the ways in which Christ himself is pierced, but then there's his piercing gaze, like the way in which his look affects those he looks upon. And I'm interested in what we make of that. What is the wounding gaze of love? That, and how do we see it now? Like, how is Christ's piercing gaze happening to me? And there are a number of stories. Simone Weil's story actually is an example of this, because I think that's what Herbert's poem is about, really, about drawing back from, like, not being able to meet the eye of Christ. Right. And then there's a story David Milch tells about his own conversion, if we can call it that, of a Catholic priest who looked at him, he said, as if he knew something about me I didn't yet know about myself. And so I'm interested in that, like the phenomenology of the knowing look, the piercing gaze, meeting the eye of Christ. So that's the idea.
That's great, Chris. And you know, it plays in really nicely with we have a quote on the website for the conference. We have a quote from C.S. Lewis's "So We Have Faces," and I think the reason we need the wounding gaze is that it's part of what helps give us a real face and shatters our masks.
Yes, that's. So. I will write that down and not give you credit for it.
No problem. Steal away.
Yes, right. That's exactly what I was going to say.
We were created to be able to communicate this love thing, this unconditional love thing. We were created to crave it, to want it, to be able to receive it, and to give it without whatever without even the mouth noises.
Yeah, without having to be the exact same person. You know, it's like, because even people who speak English, we kind of have a different, you know, certain words might mean different things to us, you know, so but there are ways like love and stuff, you know, to that go beyond these kind of things. Like what I was just about to say before you said that was that, like, preaching and stuff, you know, like, you don't have to be, you know, like reading or even saying you know, like, you can just by like attending to somebody is kind of preaching in a way. You know, it's preaching the good news, it's preaching the word of God, you know, to just love that person and to attend
I'm copying you. I found myself doing it accidentally, but
yeah, that's the danger, right? Is that we end up, you know, how do we get that balance of I don't know, it's a beautiful thing to be like, to find yourself in a syncing up with somebody such that you're kind of...
that's the thing you were pointing at about the national anthem and stuff like that. You know, it's got to be careful about it too, because you might be having your strings pulled by you know some spirit that's not trying to serve the right king.
Yeah, it's like we've already spoken a bunch about this, about how kind
also my nose is draining because of these tears and stuff. So I'm leaking.
It also reminds me of like I don't mean to like keep double clicking on noticing mirroring, but it's so fascinating to me. Like
I know you're interested in that. Yeah, you've always been interested in that.
Yeah, it's like I kind of it's like what we said about like mind control and stuff, right? It's that like in order to love someone, part of it is making yourself available to that syncing up, where it's like I'm thinking, I'm participating in your being, your thoughts, your emotions, and I'm losing myself in that to a certain degree, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is where,
but it's also like, how do we, I think to be like rooted in God or something is like how
that's what I was going to say. My father, I've mentioned going to church, and he brought up, one of his favorite people is a identifying atheist who loves people. And so I think that you can end up in this kind of the state of being where you're like part of a flock and loving people, but then it's the loving God part that in combination, which says love the person where they're at, but also seek after the better, right? Both at the same time, right? It's because if you're just loving people, all of a sudden you can be pushed and pulled to do things that maybe aren't good and aren't moving toward the better, right? So you got to be able to do both. That's like, I don't think that loving people is the second commandment that Jesus talked about. I think it's one commandment, like love God and people together. Like that's it. You got to do both. So yeah, there are a lot of atheists who practice loving people, you know. Yeah. Which is better than, you know, sacrificing babies and whatnot. But
certainly. Yeah, no, I like that. You know, I think that's exactly the right reference to make, you know, is that it's kind of I think of that as a vertical horizontal, you know.
Well, you can also
talk about this a bunch, but
I mean, you could also end up loving some people and ignoring others. Like, you know, are you loving the mother and to excluding the baby, or are you loving the mother and the baby, or are you loving the baby and excluding the mother? Like, I think you can, learning how to love better is not easy. It's something to try to put effort out, to practice being humble, cooperate with each other. You know, got a lot of work to do as people.
True. Yeah, I think you know, I don't know. I think part of the thing though is that like this the resonance and the syncing up and the mirroring and the losing yourself in the other out of love. It's also that like that's kind of a very vulnerable thing to do, right? And like I think a lot of people are kind of just kind of like it's like what we were saying earlier about like fear.
My wife has been really emphasizing this being vulnerable thing. That's really hard. You know, on our path, you know, I even have a hard time in the shower by myself, just opening up my hands to God in prayer. Like, you know, it's like there's not even a person around me, and I feel like I'm worried about there's something in me that has some hesitation of a goofiness or a weirdness that even by myself. So yeah, this whole being vulnerable thing is a topic that maybe my wife's trying to encourage me to be more vulnerable. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a topic that keeps coming up. And I don't think it's a bad topic. I think it's an important topic.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't have it figured it out. I haven't figured it out. So
yeah, I think guys in particular, it's more difficult for guys. I don't know. Maybe that's not true though.
Well, you could just say, in my experience as a guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I could say I feel like I've noticed a lot of guys who have difficulty with this, you know, like yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's the thing you said about the shower is fascinating in my opinion. Yeah. That's the other thing, that like in those moments where I feel like I'm in the kingdom, there's a different sense of our embodiment. It's like we're I don't know, something every once in a while I just like do this and I'm like,
I have a hard time doing it in church. I've actually never, I don't know if I've ever done, I've been going to church for about a year now. I don't think everyone around me is doing it.
Yeah.
I know Gavin's over there just with his eyes closed and his head bowed the whole time. Like that's what I do, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But you're right. I mean, but this move is a move that makes sense. Like, stretching, it feels good. Moving this much, like it's like, why is it? And I've even thought it's like, man, it'd be good to stretch in church and just get these movements in, and doing strange arrangements and movements of muscles and bones, and
you
know, and so if there's a hesitation there to even, you know, to lift your hands up, it's like, how are you supposed to serve God with your body? You know, if you can't even like, you know, lift up your hands.
Yeah. And I think it's just like metaphysically, like this is a thing, like we're connecting with I don't know. It's like the vertical,
Sometimes
you know. It's
this
like
will be the wrong move. Sometimes you also need to
no,
be
it's
able to
true.
bow, and sometimes you need to
It's like,
prostrate.
hello, nice to meet you.
You might need to do a duck move at some point. You know, I don't know who said the story, but he had been taught by his father to whenever to like heads up, you know, that phrase, and then he ducked and avoided getting hit. You know, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by you know, that's not always the right move. Sometimes it's the duck. You know, yeah, and it's also interesting the idea of having a relationship and a trust between like maybe a father and a son where you can receive a helpful message. That word, the message, that's an interesting one. You know, I pulled away from YouTube, and there's a part of me that wishes that I could spread a message. You know, spread messages such that more people are aware of the message. But if you're a messenger with a message, it can look like you're saying me, 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 me. You know, instead of
True.
message, message, message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I know this dilemma.
This is, I mean, when I start talking and I'm trying to be a messenger, it often looks like I'm saying me, 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 me. And then, to be honest, I'm sure there's a me, me, me in there
Yeah,
because
I'm
I'm
sure
plagued by it.
sometimes, yes, I can't tell you how excited I get before posting videos sometimes, man. And, you know, is part of it that I'm excited because, you know, I'm excited to impress people or something like that? Probably some part, you know, but like, I like to think at least that like, you know, my excitement is more, you know, it's not about me, 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 you know, it's about like, the message that I'm trying to point
Yeah.
out, you know?
I have I came into all of it on the internet trying to interact with people as a thinking I had a good message. I had the good news and having the faith of the mustard seed that, man, we're going to change the world. Let's do it. You know, and you know, it's worked out the way it's worked out. And that's another one is, can you be grateful when things don't work out the way you were hoping they worked out? You know, can you still be grateful then, have that similar gratitude, if not the same or even more, that you have whenever, you know, I was talking about when I enjoy a meal at a table and I'm grateful to God for it because of a kind of a acknowledgement of all that went into it. Sun, starlight, air, water, earth, spirit, knowledge, care, love, across time and space and people, you know. Can you still have that same gratitude when, you know, I'm not friends with Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk. Like my ideal vision is that I would be able to provide the message to, you know, people like Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk. I don't even really want people to know who I am, but I'd love to be able to share a
Yeah.
message with them.
That was part of, you know, if that was, if you remember, I kind of had to be dragged onto behind the camera with these YouTube videos, you know, like people were like, "Who are you? We want to see you." You know, and it's like, no, I don't want to make it about me, you know, but
Jason was joking about how we could wear masks like Chad the alcoholic and like Moses, or we said we gotta hide the light that's shining, you know.
maybe something like that, maybe. Yeah.
It's too
I
late,
don't know, I feel like it's
Jonathan.
worked out decently so far, you know. Hopefully
You
I'm
can,
not.
I mean, you could always, I mean, what's funny is we always have that option of putting on a mask, creating a new alias, starting a new channel, and going that route as well. So it's interesting that people would do that, like the musicians or the.
I feel like people might catch on though, because I have a particular like style almost.
Yeah.
I would have to change my you know, my pictures and stuff as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Also, you could become a team, right? Because a team's gonna do different than an individual, right?
Yeah. Did you see my conversation with
I haven't watched anything. I just gonna say that right off the bat.
Gotcha. No worries. I talked to that German guy who did like the thing. And
I saw a thumbnail on it. Yeah.
got you. So he's working on like a social media platform type of thing, and
Okay.
he's working with his friend. You know, you might actually be, you know, they might, it might be a powerful collaboration. And maybe I'll
That's a
get you. Yeah,
That's a powerful spirit there. This is the
yeah,
reason I love Karen Wong. Uh, I saw that there's a conference coming up and she'll be there. And I saw the faces and I'm like, man, I love Karen.
yeah.
I don't know these other strangers, and my default habit and routine is to be suspicious.
Hmm.
But the reason I love Karen is like she has that spirit of trying to connect and build bridge.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. I keep telling myself that I'm gonna look to see if I can go to the conference. It's getting pretty close now. I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm totally with that. Karen is great at linking these people together. It's beautiful. And uh yeah,
Yeah.
so I
I mean,
guess
I mean, but yeah, the German guy and the social media platform definitely sounds interesting. What I tell people at work is like, I wish that when people came together to discuss the technical plan, I want that recording because that's the thing that I have fun listening to.
mhm,
I
mhm.
don't want to listen to the technical plan, and then
Yeah,
it'd be cool
yeah,
if I could maybe ask questions. That would be great
yeah,
about the technical
for
plan.
sure. Maybe I'll try and set up a conversation between y'all or something, you know?
Yeah. I
Like
mean, even if I would be down with that, and even if it was him and his partner just discussing their technical plan and providing an outlet for people to ask questions,
yeah.
like
So
that would be cool too.
yeah. His buddy Marvin, who he's working on it with, both of them did a conversation with Grimgraze, so you might
Hmm.
find that interesting if you're curious.
Well,
Um,
I just want to point out, like the thing I just shared is something to me feels like a message, right? It's so just having the conversations the way we've always done is one thing, but trying to put your plans out and inviting people to ask questions and wanting, yeah, and then caring and trying to respond to those questions. This is something that doesn't happen.
yeah,
Or this is something I'd like to be a part of that
yeah,
I think that the world would be better for it, such that we could have better decision making.
hmm yeah.
It's a thing that sounds to me feels like a message that I've tried to bring for a long time, and everywhere I'm at. So
Mhm.
it's not as good as the good news,
Mm.
but it's one of the other pieces of messages.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remembered what I was thinking there, which is, or why I remembered. I was thinking of um those folk from the German land. Um, which was that he was talking about like linking channels together as well, and how like like you were talking about, we were theorizing about an alternative channel, thinking about me, but then this idea that you could join a team is interesting. Like the idea that's kind of what we're doing at TLC to a certain extent, right? And even more so in
Yeah.
places like
Well, there's a Girl
Rail
Country,
Country, yeah,
right? And then the Friday Morning Nameless, and
yeah, yeah,
I think Bacciarecci's tried to do it to a degree too. And
yeah.
there's
It's an
there's
interesting
these
thing.
collaborations, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like, and also I think that that's important for kind of busting out of our closeness. Like nowadays we don't identify with our family even. Like we don't identify with the land around us. We don't identify with the earth. It's like and like so and the platforms are not are are conducive towards that remaining the case, where it's like they're not really designed for linking people, but for getting people to be uh you know one two as one, and like stuff like that, and um
Talking about marriage.
yeah. I
That sounds
mean,
like
yeah,
a lot of times when you utter words, it's like I think people utter words that they don't even know how true their words are. Like if you went back to that part and just listened to what you just said 5 or 6 times, it might be a revelation that maybe you missed.
The platforms, they're not really designed for getting people to be two as one.
You received one, you spoke it, and then maybe it didn't even land, you know. So like, I think we do. I hear people do it all the time. It's like, wow, you just said something so brilliant and so relevant, and it's just, did it get picked up, you know?
Yeah.
So I think this is happening all the time. This is a reason. One of the reasons I'm on the YouTube land. It's like I think we might be missing a lot of gems, and I know Grimgris had his work and his server to try and help spot the gems and share the gems and do some kind of treasure hunting, you know, as a team. I'm trying to encourage that crowdsourcing of that kind of effort, but it then turns into like some people's gems. Yeah, what is that phrase? One man's trash is another man's treasure, you know. So some of these things are more relevant for certain people and other people, right?
Yeah.
Like it can be a gem for a lot of people, but maybe it's just not a gem for all people. There's things like that. That's why, like, you know, I point back at the good news according to Jesus. Maybe that's the gem for all people, but then there's these kind of other gems that are still valuable, but not for all people. I don't know. I just went rambling.
I like it. I don't mind it.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, you know, I don't mean to kind of be contrarian towards the analogy, but I can't help but think about like the physical gyms. You know, it's like I think that's kind of goes with what we were saying about doing things like, I don't know. I think maybe it's just kind of an inherent thing that it's hard to join with other people and to be as one to whatever degree that is appropriate. You know, and
my wife and I, we still work at it.
I mean,
You know?
I mean in the digital spaces, you know, it's to connect with friends and to you know, to gather in the name of the logos. And like just because I was gonna say that like that you know, to become one flesh, it usually involves like, and you know, obviously not, I do think that it applies, like this marriage analogy does kind of apply to every interaction to some extent, but it's you know, I just think that the lack of the actual like the material, the physical bodily kind of can maybe present like obstacles towards that sort of collaboration, as you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why there's an encouraging of these conferences, you know. And then what come to mind for me is like I actually get the feeling that like I have the messages aren't heard, and then can I have a gratitude? Maybe that's like I'm wondering sometimes if the messages being heard isn't also part of connected to what God wills and wants. And so then I find myself meeting up with my my first friend from second grade, and we just met up last week. And we jogged together, and he got to meet my children. He had only met one of them, and we got to reconnect. I was able to after we jogged, we prayed together. I felt like I was able to share some words that I pray would be good, that will bring about the good, and it sounded like he respected me, and
nice.
So yeah, that's so different.
Yeah.
Than you know and here we are. We've met over the internet. You know,
it's great. It's great, but it's not the same. You know,
it's good.
Yeah.
You know, in Genesis, there's the so, the good, and the very good, right? So what we have here is good, but it's not going to be as good as you and a woman being married for life and having a family, right? You and I aren't going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, while we have something good here, it's just not the very good.
Yeah.
And it might be similar to the gospel. Maybe there's a very good thing there in the gospel, and there's a lot of these other things that are good.
Yeah,
But
I kind of think about it as everything in its right place, like everything in due proportion, like the various medias, like it's just a you can't have too much of one, not enough of the other or something. And like even with let's say stuff something like um I don't know. I think I want to actually scratch that because I don't want to go into the whole world of evil and stuff. But you know, even with like the bad things in the world, like they kind of serve a function. It's just
hmm
if you have like medicine, right? If we take you know, if I take a little bit of um olive oil to increase my omega fats or whatever, and then but if I drink a gallon of olive oil, it's not going to be
hmm
good, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same with the internet, in my opinion.
hmm
Um,
Yeah. You want to sidestep the problem of evil.
mhm. Dude, I remember
That's that is the one. Like it's like the kind of the hardest one. It's the hardest problem. It's the hardest one to talk about. It's the hardest one to try to wrestle with.
oh
It's I
yeah,
don't,
yeah.
yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I also just because I talked about it not too long ago with like that was kind of the main thread of my conversation with Neil.
hmm
Uh man, a bunch of thoughts that I just had a bit of an overwhelm moment. Too many things at once. Um the what were we just saying before oh yes, I was gonna tell you about a story. Now it seems irrelevant and trivial, but when I was in high school, one of my acquaintances told me that if I drank a cup of olive oil, it was like a you know like a plastic cup, he would give
hmm
me an ounce of weed, and and I refused.
He told you, what did he tell you?
They would give me an ounce of weed, but
Ah,
but I refused. I said I'm not gonna do it.
golly.
I think some people do that though, like right, like they just drink olive oil. I don't know
I
how
don't
much you can get away with.
I don't know. I just to me the pattern there, it's a I've hung out with sketchy people. I've done sketchy things.
Yeah, this was in like the
Uh,
lunchroom at school, so it wasn't like a back
golly.
alley situation.
Ugh, man. I don't even want to tell all the stories of the stuff, the shenanigans and stuff. Yeah. I guess that
Yeah, we are. Yeah, you know, talking maybe one other thing. Yeah, everything is right place. We're talking about evil, digital, working collaboration. Me. That's kind of as far as back as I can remember at the moment.
well, I would say I'd mentioned people speaking powerful words that maybe are most relevant to the person saying them, something like that, and very relevant. And I think that happens a lot. And so, yeah, the when you pay attention to people muttering a lot of words on YouTube, um, that's a frame you can use as you're listening. It's like are they spilling divine truths about their inner life and personal life and what their own remedy for what they're going through? And do you ever just think about the different characters, different people, the different words they're saying, and don't necessarily um, assume that the things they're talking about are things that they have figured out. They're actually talking about the things that they haven't figured out yet, that they're working on. The thing that's one of some of their biggest challenges.
Mhm.
Like that's, I don't think it always works, but sometimes it's like, wow. Like I think they do. I think people do. I should say we do utter the things that we that are very relevant to ourselves, and we just somehow ignore,
Mhm.
the revelation that just came out of our mouths.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know, I think yeah, it would be nice to. I do think that maybe that's ooh, ooh. something I should attend to. You know, it's like.
And well, another exercise could be, and maybe this is not the part that you would share. It's like you could go to in this little corner. We've got to know certain characters, and then maybe when you think of a character, there's something that comes to mind about something they say often and something they talk about, and then you might think, well, is this the thing that they're working on personally? Like they're saying it's important, and maybe it is, especially for them. Right. So it's just an interesting way to look at what people are doing on YouTube.
I agree, but at the same time, I think the opposite of this is, or the counterpole perhaps to this is what we were saying about, it's not about me, you know, it's about the message. And like sometimes messages come through people that have nothing to do with the person themselves, which kind of ablates and says, get out the way, you have a new job now. And, you know, it's like, I don't know if that's me, but I feel like there's kind of a dichotomy there in some extent where it's, you know, inevitably I am speaking from my own kind of frame of reference and my worldview and my history and stuff, my experiential DNA, as Miss Karen Wong would say. Mrs. I think it's Mrs. right? But at the same time, you know, there is kind of, I think there are times where the personal, because everything's personal, you know, the personal that is speaking through someone is less about their person, you know, more about like you know, like larger persons or something, you know, like.
There is craft there, right? Like the shape of the witness, who they are, does bear on the way in which that truth gets witnessed by them. You know, and I think there's a kind of sweet spot here in which we want to say, in some sense, you're shocked, right, Michael, that you wrote that, but you were ready to write that.
Right.
Right.
It couldn't have come from anybody else.
You were ready to write that. So it is you, but it's you kind of at your truest. It's you kind of coming to that place where so it's not like you've been rendered vacuous by it. It's not a possession. Right? It is an attunement, a kind of realization of, that is my voice. It's not what I knew as my voice, perhaps, or at least I'm not always speaking in that voice, but it's there. So
I guess when we're doing it together, I might see something you don't see, and you might see something I don't see, and it's not even a might, you will, right? And so that might be why that is why it's powerful for two or more together in my name, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I guess maybe to say a little bit more about this this marriage thing. I was kind of like, it did kind of catch me, you know, a bit, but it's also that like this is kind of the fundamental pattern to a certain extent, where like the vision of the eschaton and you have like the Song of Songs, and Christ is constantly using marriage. Things like he starts his ministry at the, you know, with the wedding of Cana, and like there's all this language of bride and groom throughout, and like such that like all of it's kind of like a, you know what I mean? Yeah.
This is one of my criticisms of modern popular Christianity, that there seems to be a kind of absence of awareness of the principle of finality in the order of grace.
Yep. I would agree with that.
I mean, you are one of the, and I'm not trying to flatter you here, because actually I think it's a real indictment. I think that the fact that I only know of perhaps one bishop in the church who is talking often about theosis, deification, transformation in Christ, the divine intimacy, the end for which the Christian life exists, the end for which baptism is given to us, which is spousal transformation in intimacy with Christ, which is kind of strange, because that's the whole scriptural narrative. It begins with a marriage. The covenant's renewed through marriages. Christ begins his ministry at the wedding at Cana with his miracle, and then he calls himself the bridegroom, and then he's on the cross and he says consummatum est. He consummates his marriage with the church, and then the whole thing culminates in this great wedding feast of the Lamb, and the whole thing is filled with this spousal imagery of we are being called through baptism and through the sacramental life into intimacy with the incarnate Word. And yet, since I became a Roman Catholic 15 years ago, almost nowhere have I heard this preached or discussed. It's kind of to become interested in the mystical tradition of the Church is almost treated as a kind of niche interest for some eccentric Christians, rather than the very heart of what Christianity is all about.
So it's not so surprising, really, that a lot of people reject the proposition as being uninteresting.
Right.
If it is shorn of that fundamental dimension of significance.
Well, Jason and I were just talking about how the CHE, he sees it as a kind of marriage as well, in the form of like a city, like there's a kind of marriage that will happen there with God and God's people. So there's a bunch of marriages that can happen, and there's better and worse kinds of marriages, and at different levels between individuals and groups of people.
For sure.
A husband and wife do a kind of knowing which creates babies, right? Kinds of knowing, angels, in which maybe messages from those messengers are received, are born. There's a kind of knowing God, in which it is there can be a penetration, which can be deep, in which there can be something new. It's like, there's a kingdom of heaven, and it's like we're in it, but there could be the lack of knowing. So in a marriage, that's the kind of marriage between like a man and woman in which they don't really know each other is going to be different than the kind of marriage in which they do know each other.
Yeah.
There's the kind of knowing, like there's the knowing in which a baby is born, and then there's also a knowing in which you are complementing and supplementing and collaborating and commissioning, maybe, and hopefully, like, maybe it would be good if you're on the same mission and have similar interests, eventually, maybe it doesn't have to start out that way either. So there's different qualities to marriages based on those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That whole thing bit about being able to put out thoughts and plans and maybe feel comfortable with sounding bold, but also humbling yourself and allowing people to ask questions. Like, that's a really important part of it all. So, you want to hit stop on record and then talk about the thing,
Sure,
and ask your question?
All right.